Hello everyone. So this is the first video under Data Structure and Algorithm playlist in WIE YouTube channel, and this video is on arrays. So arrays is a very interesting and useful data structure, and it is very needed in coding. So we'll go through all the problems that arise in arrays. So let's get started. And introducing myself, I'm Ananya Ghosh. So array is a container which can hold a fixed number of items, and these items should be of the same type. So an array is represented by something like this: blocks, and each block has an element inside it, and also they have an index like 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. And the elements have to be of the same type. If it's integers, then it has to be all integers. If it's characters, it has to be all characters. Now we come to the first problem of array, finding the maximum and the minimum element in an array. So through these problems itself, we will learn the coding in C++ language, and also we will see how we take an input from the user, build an array, and also we'll see the problems. So I can go to the VS Code. So we are in the VS Code right now, and as you can see in C++ code, we first include the header libraries or the header files. So include iostream, conio.h, cmath, and climits. These are the common ones that we use. Then using namespace std, then we start with the main function. So we are finding the maximum and the minimum element in an array. So we first initialize the n, it's an integer. So we take an input from the user, what is the length of the array. So n here is the length of the array. And we take the user's input, and then we initialize the array, and then we run a for loop. So in the for loop, we iterate a variable I, which is also an integer. It starts from 0 because in an array, the elements are indexed and the indexes start from 0. So I is 0, then I less than n, I is less than the length of the array, and I plus plus. So increment of I. And then we take user input till we complete all the elements in the array. So after this, we will be initializing a max number and a min number. So that is called the int min and int max. So why is it opposite? So int max will be given the value int min, and int minimum number will be given int max. So as you can see, the definition is also given. If I hover on this int max, and this is for int min. So now we again run a for loop using the I variable, and the maximum number is selected. So using the max function, it is an inbuilt function, max num comma array items. So we compare it with all the array elements with the max num, and for the minimum we use the min function and we compare similarly, and then we print. So cout is used to print, so the max number space the minimum number, and go to the next line, end line. So let's run this. So I have to give an input, I give 5. Now to write the elements of the array: 12, 23, 6, 788, 1. So the maximum is 788 and the minimum is 1. The output has been given over here. So Now we move on to the next problem. So now we come to linear search, the next problem under arrays. And given a key by the user, we apply the linear search on the array and find the key and return the key index. So here I see a visualizing of the linear search. So here I give the input and I apply on linear search. So now the linear search is being seen, how the index is changing and the value is finally found and the index is given. So we see the coding in VS Code. So we are back to our VS Code and we include the header files. Then we will first, before we come to the linear search function, we will first define the main function. So here we take an input from the user, the array input. This much is the array input. And then we also take the key input, like which key the user wants to search. And then we print out this function, like whatever the function returns. So now we go to the function. In the function, we can see that we have given the arguments. So 3 arguments, the array, the length of the array and the key. So now we run a for loop, and in the for loop we see we are using the iterable variable I, and then we are initializing I as 0 because index of array starts from 0 and less than n. Then we are putting an if statement. So in this if statement we are saying that array I means any element in the array when it is equal to the key, then return I. So this is what the linear search is. So we first put an if statement and we determine if the array element that the pointer is at, if that is equal to what the key is given by the user, then return the index of the key, like index I, and otherwise return -1. So if this is true, then it returns I and we get that I printed. So now let's run this code. So I give the array input and the key will be, let's say, 1. So the index position is 2, 0, 1, 2. So index position is 2. I run it again and I give an input 5, same array, and the key here is 5. Okay, let's see, it gives -1. So that means the input 5 is not present, the key 5 is not present in the array. So this is binary search, the next problem under arrays. So given a key by the user, we apply the binary search and the array should be sorted, and also we need to find the mid element of the unsorted array. So here we see a visualization. So here I give the input (256), then I apply binary search and it's showing how the mid elements are found, and finally when the final element is found, the index is updated. So now we see this in the VS Code. So we are back in our VS Code and included the header files, and now before coming to the function we will define the main function. So I take the input of the array, I take the input key and I print the output. So now we come to the binary search function. So under this binary search function we see we take 3 inputs or 3 arguments. So the array, the length of the array and the key. Now I initialize a variable s that determines start of the array, and that is initialized as 0, and also the end of the array. So start and end is of the unsorted array. So end of the unsorted array as n, because at the initial stage the complete array is unsorted. So 0 index is s starting, and the nth index is ending. Now we run a while loop. So in the while loop we say that till starting point is less than the ending point, because of course, like, if starting point is greater than the ending point, then that is not solvable. I mean, that's a problem. So of course starting point has to be less than or equal to ending point. Then integer mid. Now we determine another integer, that is mid. So that counts the mid of the unsorted array. So then the mid is equals to s plus e divided by 2. So s is the starting and e is the ending, divided by 2. Now, so when we try to find the midpoint, we of course divide it by 2, and then we run an if statement which says that the array mid when equals to key. So if the mid element is equals to the key, then we can easily return the mid element index. So mid, s, e, these are all index and not the element. Okay, index of the element. So if this is true, then fine, we can easily return the mid. But if this is not true, else if we have to see if the array mid is greater than the key. Now, if the array mid is greater than the particular key given by the user, then end is equal to mid minus 1. So we have to kind of swap it, like we have to bring it back. And otherwise, if that is also not true, then we have to say that s equals to mid plus 1. So one step forward we have to take it. And if nothing is true, then we have to return minus 1, like the element is not found. So let's run this. So this is binary search. The elements have to be sorted. So let's take a simple one, and I look for 4. Index is 3. So yes, it's working. Index is 3. Now, so this is selection sort. Now we start with the sorting of arrays, and in selection sort we find the minimum element in the array and swap it with the first element of the array. So sorting is basically in an unsorted array, like in which there is no pattern of or order of the elements, we convert it into ascending order. That is what sorting is. We just sort it. So now we go to VS Code and see what exactly it is. So we have come to the VS Code, and so in the main function we take the array input. So this much is the array input, and after that we run a for loop. So in which I is equals to 0, I starts from 0 till n minus 1, and inside that another for loop. So it's nested for loop. Inside that j equals to I plus 1. So if I is 0, j is 0 plus 1. I is 1, j is 1 plus 1, 2. So the next element, if I is the first element, j is the next element. Till n. So I runs till n minus 1. So when I is n minus 1, j has to be n. Right? N minus 1 plus 1. So n. So I is the previous element, j is the next element. Then we see the if statement. If array j is less than array I. So array j means the next element, and array I means the element before the j element. So if the two elements are compared in this way, like the next element is less than the previous element, then we have to swap, and this is for the swapping. So we determine a temporary variable temp to store the value of array j, array index j, and then array index j is stored in, this value is stored in the array index I, and then array index I, the temp value is stored inside array of index I. So if my ith index value is suppose 8 and the jth index element value is 7, 8 and 7. So 7 is less than 8, true. If statement goes true, then I have to swap. So the ith index element becomes 7. Swapping happens. Now another for loop, because we have to print the complete array again, right? So for the for loop, we print out the array. So now we see the working of this code. I take 5 and have to insert a random. See, it has been sorted. 1, 3, 5, 12, 9, 99. So great, we can move on to the next problem. So this is bubble sort, the next kind of sorting in arrays. So we compare each two elements from the first and swap in case of wrong order. Wrong order means the minimum element is on the right side and the maximum is on the left side, then we swap it. So we have this kind of code. We go to VS Code and see the code properly. So now this is bubble sort, and we can see that in the main function we take the input of the array, and after that we initialize a variable called counter, and counter we initialize as 1 because we will be checking the next element, not the first element. From the next element we will compare the next element with the first element, and then if it's in the wrong order then we'll swap. So while counter is less than the length of the array, that's n, we run a for loop. So I equals to 0 till I equals to n minus counter, and then increment the I. Then in the if statement we say that if the array I is greater than array I plus 1. So the element at ith index is greater than the element, the next element, I plus 1th index. So then we have to swap. So this is the swapping, just like we saw in the previous part in selection sort. Then we increment the counter. We come out of the for loop and we increment the counter, then again the for loop starts. And finally we have to print the array that's sorted. So we see the output. So here I give, and then 12, 29, 1, 0, 2. So here we get the sorted one. So this will be the last kind of problem under the arrays and sorting. So insertion sort. So in insertion sort, we insert an element from the unsorted array to its correct position in the sorted array. So we see the code in VS Code. So this is the insertion sort, and so inside the main function we take the array input. After that we run a for loop where I is initialized as 1 until less than the length of the array n, and then we initialize the variable current with the ith index element of the array, and then an integer j which is initialized as I minus 1. So we run a while loop where array j, jth element, is greater than the current. So j is basically, if I is the second index, then j will be the first index. So the previous element is greater than the current, and current is the present element, and j is greater than equal to 0. Array j plus 1. Array j plus 1 means the next element, like array j and j plus 1. So which is initialized as or given the value array jth element, and then j is decremented. So, and finally we come out of the while loop and we say that array j plus 1 with element is equals to the current element, and then again the for loop starts. So here then we print the sorted array. Let's see the output. Here I give 5. So here it's sorted. With this we come to the end of our video on arrays and related problems on arrays like sorting and searching. So stay tuned for our next upcoming videos under the DSA playlist. Thank you for watching and keep coding.